What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. I'm back to break down all of the main card fights taking place this weekend at UFC 313 from a betting perspective. Hopefully you'll be able to use the information in this video to make better betting decisions, maybe even earn some extra cash. And of course, we've got a fantastic main event to take a deep dive into this weekend. The fight between Pereira and Ankalaev should be a good one. Both guys are in the even money odds range. They're both probably the two best light heavyweights in the world, and so if you can lean 60-40 one way or the other on these two guys, you're going to find yourself a very good bet. So we're going to be going deep on that fight in a moment, and as ever, we will be live betting this weekend, and hopefully we'll be making a profit. We do most weeks. You can see over the last 10 years we've performed exceptionally well. I'm the best in the world when it comes to live betting on the UFC. Been doing it for a very, very long time. We've been live betting on the sport for 15 years. We've made a lot of money. We're extremely good at it. And so if you watch every UFC event live, you should seriously consider joining my live betting group. You will love it because essentially you're going to be earning money while watching the UFC. We make a profit on just under 70% of UFC events. Link in the description below to find out more information if you'd like to join. And what I'm going to do now, so you know exactly what to expect, I'm going to play a short clip from a live bet that we've won recently. A couple of events ago, we bet on Alonzo Menifield to win. He came through for us big time. So I'm going to show you a clip of the audio from my live betting group where I talked people through the reasons why I would be live betting Menifield. So you can listen to this now. Check out the kind of thing you can expect to see if it's right for you. Generally, what we do before every fight, we will kind of outline the live betting strategy for betting that particular fight, because we want to have a plan going in. We don't want to be reactive. We want to think about our strategy for live betting either guy, the circumstances, the things we need to see either guy need to do in order to pull the trigger on either of them. So we go through the live betting strategy before the fight takes place, and then as the fight's taking place, I commentate the fight from a betting perspective. And when those conditions are met for us placing a live bet on one of those fighters, I'll obviously call the live bet out. So watch this, Alonzo Menifield, and yeah, he came through for us big time, and I'm very confident we'll make another profit this weekend at UFC 313. Julius Walker. So this is Walker's UFC debut, and like a couple of the fighters from earlier on in the night, we don't know anything about Walker. He's a complete unknown. There's very, very little footage of him. So completely going into this fight blind. What we do know about Menifield is that he's quite old at 37 years old, so there's a 12-year age gap between these two. And we know the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time. We also know that Menifield is quite old at 37 years old, but we do know Menifield slows his fights wear on. The problem is we don't know if Walker does or does not, because most of his career fights have ended very quick. So we'll see how it goes. This is probably going to be one of those fights. I mean, we've said this about Veretennikov versus Vanderford. Probably don't want to be jumping into live betting this one too early. We probably want to be waiting until sort of the midway point through round two before we make a decision on this one, and we can see how both guys are looking. We don't know what to expect from Walker. We don't know what to expect from Sakura, but we did know what to expect from Bukauskas, and we also know what to expect from Menifield, because we've got tons of footage on Menifield. So Menifield is difficult to take down, difficult to hold down, good offensive wrestler, but he very, very rarely grapples. Menifield's a guy that likes to stand and bang. He is a guy that can be quite passive, can be quite tentative at times. We've seen him in his fight against Devin Clark in this position. Do we see him in here? And against Clark, he didn't show any urgency to work his back off the cage. He's got knockout power, pretty technical striking. Not a whole lot to say, really. He's got bad fight IQ, does have a lack of urgency at times. Walker now trying to get in on the legs of Menifield. Menifield's got that nice underhook on the right side. The problem is Walker's only been past the first round once in his 6 career fights. 5 of his 6 career fights have ended in round 1. So even though he's looking strong in this clinch position, who knows what his cardio is going to look like into the second and third round. You know, for all of Menifield's weaknesses, at least you know what you're getting from him. He's more battle tested. We know Menifield can go at a reasonably good pace for 3 rounds. Same can't be said for Walker. Walker lands a couple big shots there before shooting in deep on the legs of Menefield again. Menefield did a good job of getting those underhooks in play. Nice uppercut from Walker. Aggressive start from Walker. Menefield with a takedown. Walker putting a lot of pressure on Menefield here, really. Nice deep double leg entry there from Walker. But again, Menefield does a really good job of getting the underhook in play on the right side early. Creates that nice wide base against the cage. And you've got to think, with Walker being pretty inexperienced, he's only had 6 pro fights. He's only been past round one time. If you're Walker, is he starting to panic a little bit here? Because he's thrown the kitchen sink at Menefield. He's got in on a few really good takedown attempts. He's landed some pretty good shots, and Menefield's still in there with him. Great takedown offense again from Menefield. Deep underhook on the right side. Is the debutant going to adrenaline dump here? Remember, Menefield slows as well. Big knee from Walker. Both these guys are... Oh, big spinning elbow from Walker. Head and arm choke from Menefield. Both these guys are very prone to adrenaline dumping and slowing. So even though Walker looks gassed here, Menefield could also gas. Menefield is the exact kind of guy that will adrenaline dump. This fight's going to come down to cardio. And without knowing how Walker looks deep in fights, difficult to see who's going to come out on top at the moment. The question is, will Menefield's takedown defense hold up as well as it did in round 1? Now that he's tired, if Walker starts getting in deep on his legs again. Walker clearly tired in that round, but he did catch a bit of a second wind towards the end of round 1. Menefield, even though he didn't look too tired in the first round, we do know Menefield slows a lot as fights wear on, and he committed a lot of energy to the finish there. So Menefield likely to slow big time here. So at the moment, difficult fight to predict. Risky to go in on either guy, and I don't think the odds are amazing on either guy at the moment either, to be fair. Grueling pace. Quite crazy, actually. Both guys were looking really gassed in the first, but they're looking all right here, all things considered. When you consider how much energy they exerted, they've not slowed anywhere near as much as I thought they would. Big combo from Menefield. We got to remember, man, Walker came in on 10 days' notice. His debut, doesn't have much experience going past round 1. Who knows how he's going to look in round 3? Especially if Menefield could put him on his back. This would be a great time for Menefield to shoot a takedown. Big right hand from Menefield. And here Alonso's corner telling him to be first. Obviously, he's exhausted. He's fighting a much bigger, much younger guy. Competitive fight this, but risks associated with betting both of them. With that, guys, I am going to recommend a 1 unit bet on Menefield at odds of 2.62. That's 1 unit Menefield, 2.10. Go at 1 unit Menefield, 2.10. 1 unit Menefield, 2.10. Get in on that, guys. So I think Menefield's up 2 rounds here. I think both guys are absolutely exhausted, but I think Menefield won the first and second round. He obviously had Walker hurt very bad in round 1, and he landed the cleaner, harder shots in round 2 as well. At worst, this is 1 round apiece, but I personally feel Menefield is up 2 rounds here, has a very, very good chance of being up 2 rounds. So Bet365 currently have both guys in the even money odds range. That is crazy to me. Menefield landed the cleaner, harder shots in round 2. He should be up 2 rounds here. Menefield should be up 2. Walker's the younger guy, but he did look very tired in that round. He also doesn't have any experience in his career going into round 3. And on top of that, he's coming in on 10 days' notice. So Menefield should be up 2. If he's not, he's still more experienced than Walker. And there's an eye poke early in this round. So Walker, let me know how you're scoring this, guys. But Menafield should be up 2 rounds here. He landed the cleaner, harder stuff in round 2. So the odds are kind of crazy here. When you start to see the mouthpiece fall out like that, it's just a sign that Walker's starting to get tired. His mouth's open wider, so his mouthpiece more likely to fall out. Oh, huge left hand from Menafield. Walker just takes it and keeps coming forward. That landed clean. Another left hand from Menafield. Every time Menafield lands, he does back Walker up. Nice jab there. Menafield's definitely landing the cleaner, harder, more impactful stuff. Oh, low blow and an elbow after the low blow as well. Dirty from Walker. Very, very dirty. 20 seconds left to go. So I've got Menafield winning the first 2 rounds. You can make a case for him winning the third as well, but the third is close. But again, just like in round 1 and 2, Menafield has landed the cleaner, harder punches in the third round. Huge right hand from Menafield. So you can make a case for Menafield taking that 30-27. It should be 29-28 at worst. Once again, we have bet the stronger side at underdog odds. Once again, we have got our money into a really strong position. Now, will the judges do their job and score this fight correctly? Menafield won the first round clear, won the second round relatively clear, and I believe in the final 30 seconds of that third round, also edged round 3. I've personally got this 30-27 Menafield. When we talk about effective grappling and striking, Menafield stuffed every takedown. He landed the cleaner, harder shots on the feet. He did more damage. Menafield should take every round, in my opinion. But, like I say, the judges have been cruel to us in recent weeks. Will they be cruel to us once again? But I do feel we got in very good odds on Menafield there. Slight dog odds, even money odds range in a fight where he should be at 2 rounds. Very nice. Hopefully the judges do their job. Oh, no worries, fat mate. No worries, dude. So hopefully the judges get this right, man. The judges have cost us a lot of money in recent weeks, and we have been on the stronger side on so many bad decisions. If we can just snipe a winner here, that will make me feel a bit happier going into next week. We've had a good day on football. Can we have a good day on UFC as well? Come on, judges, do your job. Split decision graphic is up, though. Come on, judges, do your job. How can you not score that for Menafield if you're judging on effective striking and grappling? There he is. Walker landed no takedowns, and Menafield landed the cleaner, harder shots in every round. Come on, judges. It has to be Menafield. And Alonzo Menafield with a win, boys. The judges get it right. I don't know exactly what was going on there, but that was apologies, Svet. Svet, I'm so sorry, bro. That was the weirdest scorecard readout from Buffer I have ever heard. Did you guys hear that? Usually he says judge so-and-so and the scorecard for the fighter. Judge so-and-so scorecard for the fighter. And then judge so-and-so and the winner by da-da-da-da-da. I don't know what Buffer was doing there. He announced that decision in a way he's never done before. But yeah, that threw me off, Svet. I'm really sorry, because then he started saying like Atomic, and I'm like, I don't know what these guys' nicknames are. I don't fucking know. Anyway, we've been on the wrong end of some real bad decisions lately, so it's nice that the judges get that one right and put us in profit for the night. Pretty cool. I will say this, one judge had a 30-27 Menafield. I think that's the correct score. Again, if you're following the scoring criteria by the letter of the law, that fight was kind of similar to Krupp versus Bellato. Yes, for the majority of the fight, Menafield was looking more tired out of the two, but we're not scoring fights based on tiredness. We're scoring fights, or we're supposed to be scoring fights based on effective striking and grappling. In every single round, Alonzo landed the cleaner, harder shots and did more damage. He was the effective striker. In every round, Walker tried to take Menafield down. He couldn't. That is ineffective grappling. Menafield won that fight 30-27, clear in my opinion. And even though we get the win and it's great and all that, it is a bit, again, a little bit demoralizing how a fight has to go to how a fight like that has to go to a split decision, because we shouldn't be sweating bets like that. At the end of round 2, Menafield should be up 2 clear. There's no basis, if you're following the scoring criteria, to score any of those rounds for Walker. He didn't achieve anything in any of those rounds apart from making Menafield look tired. And so it's annoying we have to sweat those, but it is nice the judges got it right. So that was the audio from our live betting group for our winner on Alonzo Menafield. He came through for us big in what was a very tough, close, competitive fight. In next week's breakdown video, I'm sure I'll have more winners to put at the beginning that you can listen to from UFC 313 this week. If you are interested in joining my live betting group in time for this weekend's event, there's a link in the description below. Like I say, we make a profit on the majority of events, so I think you'll love it. Give it a try, and it's my bread and butter, my speciality. It's what I've been doing for 15 years now. I'm very good at it, and if you join us, you'll see that extremely quickly when you listen to our strategies for betting each fight, and also my commentary. So now, let's dive into breaking down the main event of this weekend's card, which is going to be Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. Such a deep, complex fight with so much for us to think about. And as ever, we'll start off by taking a look at the odds. So we can see that, at the moment, both guys are in the even money odds range, with Ankalaev as a slight underdog. So we'll say the average odds on Pereira are around 1.87, which is going to be minus 115 for an implied probability of 53%. If we take a look at the odds on Ankalaev, he's around an average of 1.95, which is going to be minus 105 for an implied probability of 51%. So both guys about 50-50 in the eyes of the odds. There's so much for us to discuss on this fight. So Pereira is 37 years old, 6'4", with an 80-inch reach. And Ankalaev is 32 years old, 6'3", with a 75-inch reach. So there are a couple of X factors for us to dig into here, and I'm going to bring up Wikipedia for one of them because it gives us a much quicker summary of Alex Pereira's kickboxing record, which is quite important in the context of this fight. So we know this is a young man's sport. We know Father Time is undefeated, and we know that you can't cheat Father Time forever. We know there are some outliers that perform well deeper into their career and kind of defy the trends and defy most likely outcomes. Daniel Cormier, probably one of the best examples I can think of. But generally speaking, once you start to get into your late 30s, you do start to decline significantly. So we can see that Pereira is 37 years old, and he's going to be 38 years old in just 4 months' time. So Pereira is at that stage in his career where you'd expect him to be declining quite heavily. Now, we haven't seen any sign of that yet. Obviously, he's looked amazing. His striking looked phenomenally sharp in his last fight against Khalil Roundtree. But at the end of the day, Father Time's undefeated. We know Father Time will come for Pereira soon. He's at that stage in his career. And while it is possible he could be an outlier like a Daniel Cormier and extend his career, far beyond his 30s. Maybe he's one of these guys like Randy Couture that performs well deep into his 40s. That is extremely unlikely. And when we talk about guys like Randy Couture or Daniel Cormier, they are very unique unicorns that don't come around very often. And typically speaking, when you see guys like Daniel Cormier or Randy Couture, or even Alex Pereira's mentor, Glover Teixeira, fight at championship level deep into their 40s, it tends to be because they've got a base in grappling, which means they don't have to kind of mix it up, eat big shots, rely on their reflexes, their sharpness, their speed to strike with these young, hungry bulls. The only guy I can really think of which went deep into his 40s with a reasonably good amount of success with a striking-based style was Dan Henderson. I can't really think of anyone else that's ever been able to do it. And so, if you can think of someone, please leave a comment below or hit me up on Discord and let me know. But as far as I know, most guys that perform at a championship level into their 40s tend to rely heavily on grappling. And so we know Pereira does fit the profile of someone that will decline very, very hard soon. You know, he's an old Brazilian. He's taken a bunch of damage in his career. He's only had 14 pro MMA fights, but if we look at his Wikipedia record, we can see that he's had 40 kickboxing fights. And so, in total, that's obviously 54 career fights, fighting at a very high level. A lot of wear and tear on the body, a lot of brain trauma. Only a matter of time before Father Time hits Pereira very hard. And at this stage in his career, 38 years old, 54 pro fights, it does tend to creep up on you very quickly. And so we know sometime soon, sometime in the very near future, sometime in the next year, Pereira is probably going to show up and look very, very bad at some point. That's just the way it is. Oh, actually, I remember a 40-year-old guy, a 40-year-old striker, Stephen Thompson, right? I wouldn't say necessarily Thompson has performed at that championship level, because he's never really seriously been in the title picture in terms of fighting for titles. Obviously, it would be very difficult for him with wrestlers like Kamaru Usman holding the belt in his division. We know Thompson's not great on the ground, but Thompson obviously did strike at a decent level at welterweight into his 40s. But other than Thompson, I can't think of another striker that's done that. So Ankalaev is 32 years old. He's absolutely in his prime for a light heavyweight. He should be improving from fight to fight. If not, you know, he's not going to be declining at this stage in his career. Father Time is on his side. Pereira does have a 5-inch reach advantage over Ankalaev, which is very nice. It's also super interesting because Ankalaev's a big guy. He's always fought at light heavyweight, whereas Pereira's come up from middleweight and he's still got a huge reach advantage. So Ankalaev, you will be up against it with that reach advantage because Pereira is obviously a very high level striker that knows how to use that. So those are kind of the X factors in terms of how these two match up. I do think you need to be very careful if you're betting on Pereira this weekend. Generally speaking, I know he's a monster. I know he's a very high level striker. But generally speaking, 37, 38-year-old Brazilian strikers, when they're fighting these young, hungry Russian bulls, they don't tend to perform very well over the long term in situations like this. So is this the weekend, the fight where Ankalaev, you know, becomes the champ and Pereira, you know, his bubble kind of bursts, maybe he gets found out a little bit, maybe Father Time takes his toll? Quite possibly. So before we get into matching how these two match up stylistically and showing you a little bit of footage of the strengths and weaknesses of both guys and who's more likely to win this fight, I think a big aspect of betting this matchup comes down to what Ankalaev is going to do. So if you're in my live betting group, before every fight, before we live bet every fight, we will talk through my live betting strategy for betting each fight, because it's very hard to make money betting on sports, and preparation and research is key. Preparation and research for making a profit betting on sports is very important, so that you're not having to be reactive and making very difficult decisions in the heat of the moment. So if you're going into live betting a football match or an MMA fight, what you don't want to be doing is going in blind with an open mind and being very reactive to the action that is happening in the octagon. Because MMA is a chaotic, fast-paced sport where a lot can happen and fights can flip on their head in an instant. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're constantly reacting to what is happening. What you want to be doing is going in fully prepared, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of both guys, knowing exactly what to expect from both guys, and knowing the winning conditions, the strategies, the game plans that both fighters need to use in order to win, or give themselves the best chance of winning. And so when the fights start to play out in that direction, you can obviously live bet based on that, long in advance of when it becomes obvious to everyone else. And that's how we get in early at great odds, and that's how we're able to produce charts like this, where over the last 10 years we've made a profit on just under 70% of events. We absolutely crush it. I'm the best in the world at this, and the research, the preparation is the reason why I've been so successful and will continue to be successful for the next 1,000 years, right? So when we're looking at a fight like Ankalaev and Pereira, this fight is not so much, in fact it has nothing to do with who's the more skilled fighter or who is the better fighter. This fight completely comes down to what game plan and strategy Magomed Ankalaev uses, because there's one particular strategy Magomed Ankalaev can use in this fight which will make this the easiest fight of his career. This will be a total cakewalk for Ankalaev this weekend if he uses one specific game plan and strategy that he's capable of using. And if he uses this particular game plan and strategy, he will be the champ this weekend. I would cap it at like 95%. And there's nothing that Alex Pereira can do to stop him. And of course I'm talking about wrestling. Magomed Ankalaev, very high level combat sambo practitioner. Good offensive wrestling, good grappling control, very good ground game. And we know that Pereira, coming from that traditional kickboxing background, has very bad takedown offense and a very low level ground game, and he's very weak off his back. Now, we'll show you some footage of that deeper into the breakdown so that you can see for yourself. For now, you'll just have to take my word for it. Later on, we'll show you some footage so you can see it for yourself. But this fight's all going to come down to whether or not Ankalaev will grapple or not. And this is a question that we have to ask ourselves so often when we're betting on MMA fights. So often. And it's not necessarily around, will this fighter wrestle? Will they not wrestle? It can be anything, right? There's so many different so many different questions that have to be answered. If you have a guy that tends to slow down as fights we're on, we ask ourselves the question, will he fight a bit safer and smarter and start slower and pace himself better? When we research these fights, it's so easy for us to identify the game plans and strategies that give either fighter the best chance of winning. It is so easy for us to do that. I could train monkeys. I could train 3-year-olds on how to do it. It is not difficult. The difficult aspect of making money betting on the sport of MMA is figuring out whether the fighters will actually do what gives them the best chance of winning. And that sounds like an insane thing to say. That sounds like an absolutely insane thing to say. Because if you are a career prize fighter, if your profession is you are a cage fighter, you go into a cage, fight another man to the death until the time limit's up or the referee pulls you off him, you would think that every single fighter in the UFC would do absolutely whatever it took within their power to win every single fight that they compete in, right? That's the logical thing. You'd think they would do their absolute very best. But I promise you, from 15 years of experience, from dedicating thousands of hours to this craft, from someone that has literally made a profit betting on the UFC every single year for the last 15 years, I promise you that a substantial percentage of the time, and I'm talking maybe 20, 30, 40% of fights on every UFC card, you will see 20 to 30 to 40% of fighters make a conscious decision to not fight with a game plan and strategy that gives them the best chance of winning, even though they are capable of using that game plan and strategy. And this is why our edge is so fucking big live betting on the UFC, and this is why we make so much money and do so well over such a long period of time. It's because when you place pre-fight bets, you are at the mercy of the universe. If you are pre-fight betting this fight this weekend, you have absolutely no idea whether Ankalaev will wrestle or not. You know, if Ankalaev does grapple this weekend, he has like a 95% chance of winning. You know, if he doesn't grapple this weekend, he probably has like a 30 to 40% chance of winning. So if you bet this fight pre-fight, you're at the mercy of the universe. You have to just fucking put your balls on the line, put your money in danger, hope for the best. Whereas with live betting on a fight like this, you could just wait and see what happens. You can wait and see till what happens when the fight starts. You can wait and see how Pereira's takedown offense looks. You can wait and see if Ankalaev is showing any willingness to grapple. And then you can only put your money in danger, or only have to put your money in danger, once you've got confirmation of Ankalaev doing the things you want to see him do. And that's why we perform so well, because we come into every fight very well prepared. Now, of course, everyone knows that Ankalaev's path to victory this weekend is wrestling. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. So everyone is well aware of this when they live bet the fight this weekend. But how many people know Jordan Santos and Ozzy Diaz upside down, inside out, left to right? How many people know everything there is to know about these two guys? Probably not that many people in the world, because people are very lazy. They don't research these fights. People have got very busy lives. They're hard working. They don't have time to research fights like this. I do. This is my job. And so our edge comes from understanding these guys on a very, very deep level, and we can use that knowledge in live betting to make money, give us a huge edge. How is this relevant to the Ankalaev and Pereira fight? Why do I keep banging on about this? I keep banging on about this because ultimately it doesn't matter how much you know about the sport, how many years you've been profitable, how many thousands of hours of experience you've got, how smart you are, what AI models you've got, what your best mate on Twitter says, or your guy, the dude in work that always picks fights correctly. It doesn't matter what any of these guys say or do or think. Ultimately, there is no way to know this weekend whether Ankalaev will grapple or not. Therefore, there's no way to know who's going to fucking win this fight with a high degree of confidence. And that's what makes this fight very, very complicated from a betting point of view. It makes it great from a live betting point of view. It makes it very, very complicated from a pre-fight betting point of view. So, now I want to talk about a friend of mine who's been a member of my community for a long time, and his name is Ghoul. His name is Ghoul, and he's been a member of mine in the live betting group for a couple of years now. And Ghoul has got a certain way with words, and he does a real good job of reminding us very often in the live betting group the kind of fighters that consistently cost us money. And the type of fighters that can consistently cost us money, to quote Ghoul, are retards. Okay? They're retards. Now, I don't even know if I can use the word retard, so I'm going to ask ChatGPT, and I'm going to see what ChatGPT says. Ghoul says it. Ghoul calls these certain fighters retards. I'm going to see if I can do it. So, in the context of talking about sports and athletes, is it offensive to use the term retard when a fighter doesn't perform in a way that you consider to be smart? Let's see what ChatGPT's got to say. Okay, yes, using the term retard in that context is offensive and inappropriate. Ghoul, you're a naughty boy, you know. The word has a history of being used as a derogatory slur against individuals with intellectual disabilities. While some people might use it casually to describe something they see as foolish or lacking intelligence, it is widely considered disrespectful and ableist. In sports discussions, a better approach, check out ChatGPT coming up with the alternatives. In sports discussions, a better approach would be to critique an athlete's performance with more precise language, such as, "That was an unwise decision. He fought recklessly. That wasn't a smart strategy." Oh, these are, to be fair, these are all things that I do say on Saturday nights in a live betting group, to be fair. Using thoughtful language keeps the conversation respectful and helps maintain a more professional and constructive discussion about sports. Well, ChatGPT, I don't know if you know anything about the MMA community, but it's evil, toxic, and dirty. So, you know, when it comes to respectfulness, professionalism, and constructive discussion, I ain't going to find any of that in the MMA community. Okay, can I be cancelled for calling UFC fighters retards? Let's see what ChatGPT's got to say. Yes, using the term retard to describe UFC fighters or anyone could definitely lead to backlash, especially in today's social climate. Many people view the word as offensive and ableist, and if you use it publicly, especially on social media or in videos, you could face criticism, loss of followers, or even deplatforming, depending on the context and reach of your content. Or maybe, fortunately for us, our reach isn't that far. But cancel culture isn't always predictable. Okay, so maybe we better stay away from calling Mr. Ankalaev a retard. So what I will say about Ankalaev is he doesn't make smart decisions in fights. What's ChatGPT saying I should... Okay, yeah, he makes unwise decisions and uses strategies that were not smart. We know that for sure. This guy, one of the best grapplers in the game, you know, very, very high level grappler, probably the best grappler in the light heavyweight division. I can't think of many other grapplers who are better than him in the light heavyweight division, but for some strange reason, he doesn't use it very often. So when I was coming into researching this fight this weekend, I was all over Ankalaev. I thought I would be betting huge on him this weekend. I thought he would be an absolute no-brainer bet in the even money odds range, because we all know how bad Alex Pereira's takedown offense is. We all know how bad he is on the ground. But when you go back and you watch Ankalaev's fights in the cold light of day, he never fucking grapples. Even in the Blachowicz fight, where he used probably more grappling than any other fight we've seen in recent years, he didn't start to grapple or try to take Blachowicz down until Blachowicz had inflicted so much damage on one of his legs with leg kicks, Ankalaev could barely stand up. And that is fighting recklessly, because you're willing to take potentially a fight-ending amount of damage before you want to start fighting smart. And how often do we see these guys that have a clear and obvious path to victory with grappling, and we know they can win very easily if they just wrestle, but for whatever reason they refuse to wrestle, they're reluctant to grapple, and then they end up getting knocked out before they shoot their first takedown. Ankalaev is the exact kind of guy that will happen to. So what I want to do now is show you a bit of footage of Pereira's takedown offense and ground game, because we've spoken so much about it being terrible. And as always, for the naysayers that are like, Allsop, you're clueless, you don't know what you're talking about, you're a fraud, you're so dumb, ha ha ha, I'm so smart. We need to put footage in so that you guys can see what is true. So here we go. So the first Jiri fight, we can see Jiri shoots a takedown here, in on a single leg, drives Pereira up against the cage, going for that high crotch single leg. So he's just holding on to a guillotine here just to try and deter Jiri on this takedown, but it's not really going to work. He should be fighting for underhooks instead, and because he doesn't, he just gets taken down easily. So Jiri takes him down into half guard here with about 2 minutes and 10 seconds left to go in the round. And if we just skip through, you can see Pereira is easy to hold down, very easy to control, and obviously it is worth noting that Ankalaev is a far better offensive wrestler with a far better ground game than Jiri. So Pereira pops back up to his feet. He's on the ground for about 2 minutes. He does work back up to his feet, and then that's a little bit of takedown offense and ground game for you to look at from Mr. Pereira. Then if we bring up the Blachowicz fight, we see more of it. Now, obviously, this fight was a few years ago. So this fight was back in 2023. So a couple of years ago now. And even though Pereira will have been training very hard in the last 2 years, with his age, I can't imagine Pereira's takedown offense would have got any better. Really, it could even have declined, because balance is something that goes pretty quickly when you are in your late 30s. So we can see similar sort of takedown attempt that we saw from Jiri. Blachowicz is in on, or he was in on, a single leg. He's now working for a double leg. But again, Pereira is trying to deter Jiri from deter Blachowicz from taking him down with his guillotine, instead of just fighting for underhooks, where he can be off the hook here. Now he's got an underhook on the right side. Back to a single leg. What you'd really like to see, right? When you look at how much space is in there, underneath the armpits of Blachowicz on both sides. Pereira's a big, strong guy, very strong in the upper body. What he should be doing is digging deep underhooks rather than holding on to these guillotines. And if you dig deep underhooks, rather than throwing elbows and going for, you know, guillotines, if you just dig underhooks, it will be very, very difficult for Blachowicz to take you down from here. So already, very bad takedown offense from Pereira. He hasn't been made to pay yet, but you know, when you're making this many mistakes, it's only a matter of time. So, in on a single leg, no underhooks in play. So Blachowicz gets the takedown. And you can see Pereira very, very slow to scramble over to the cage. Even though there's a lot of space for him to quickly scramble over to the cage. As he gets taken down, he kind of hesitates, which enables Blachowicz to flatten him back out. And again, Blachowicz is like a 40-year-old kickboxer, right? Ankalaev is a far better MMA grappler than Blachowicz. So Blachowicz gets the back, locks in the body triangle, there it is, and there's 3 minutes left to go in the round. So if we just skip through, Pereira gets controlled for the whole of the round, and pretty clear round 1 for Blachowicz. So if we go into round 2, again, we're only focusing on the grappling here. You can see Blachowicz shoots a nicely timed double leg, drives through, puts Pereira on his back, straight into full guard. So, there's about 3 minutes left to go in the round, 3 minutes 15 seconds. If we just skip through. Now, Pereira's not in that bad of a position here because he's relatively close to the cage. He can open his guard up, scoot his butt over to the cage, start to wall walk back up to his feet. But he kind of just hesitates for a while. He's been on the ground for a minute at this point. Now he's got his back tight to the cage. Starts to push down on the head, stand back up. So he did a reasonably good job of standing back up there. He was only on the ground for about a minute. And then you can see Blachowicz shoots a takedown in a moment, although he's very tired at this stage in the fight. I think this fight was at altitude as well. I think he was in Utah. You can see Blachowicz very gassed. Alright, we'll skip through. Alright, into round 3. So midway through the round, you get Blachowicz shoot a takedown here, but he's very tired. It's at altitude. He's 40 years old. Doesn't have the energy to get in on Pereira's legs. And again, look at the adjustment Pereira's made here though, where he goes to underhooks. See, underhook on the left side, overhook on the right side. When you use underhooks, very, very difficult for your opponent to get the takedown as long as your balance isn't totally terrible. And then right at the end of the round, Blachowicz shoots a single leg and Pereira just goes down very easily. 40 seconds left to go in the round. If we just skip through, Blachowicz holds him down easily. So Pereira's takedown offense, very, very bad. Very, very, very bad. Needless to say that if Ankalaev comes into this fight with a grappling heavy game plan, outside of Pereira catching him with like a big flying knee or uppercut, you know, Jorge Masvidal style against Ben Askren, outside of some crazy shot like that happening as he catches Ankalaev on the way in, very, very unlikely Pereira wins this fight if Ankalaev chooses to grapple. But like we were saying at the beginning of this video, Ankalaev is one of these guys that never fucking grapples. In fact, what we're going to do is show a combination, and I hate how the audio starts on Fight Pass before I have a chance to silence it. Anyway, what we're going to do is show a combination of stats and also fight footage to make the point of why Ankalaev is, I mean, we can't call him the R word because we might get cancelled. We'll just call him a tricky fish. That's what we'll call him. We'll call him a tricky fish. Apologies if that's offensive in any way, but we need to call Ankalaev something because he doesn't make smart decisions in fights. So what we're going to do is, if we take a look at all of Ankalaev's fights in the UFC, we can see this column here, TD, is going to show us for each fight how many takedowns he shot. So against Alexander Rakic, he shot 0, which is an interesting decision because, you know, Rakic is a dangerous striker. Against Johnny Walker, he shot 0. Against in this Johnny Walker fight, he shot 1 takedown, very nice. In the Blachowicz fight, he shot 10 allegedly, although when you watch the fight back, didn't really commit to 10 takedowns. If we look at the Anthony Smith fight, he shot 0. If we look at the Thiago Santos fight, he shot 2. If we look at the Volkan Oezdemir fight, he shot 4. Very nice. Only hit 1 of them though. If we look at the Krylov fight, he shot 9. Only took him down 3 times though. Ion Cutelaba, 0. Ion Cutelaba, 0. Dalcha Lungambula, 3. Klidson Abreu, 3. And Marcin Pratnio, 0. And Paul Craig, 0. So what the stats show is that it's very rare that Ankalaev shoots takedowns. In, I would say, 60 to 70% of his fights, he doesn't shoot any takedowns at all. Against some pretty dangerous strikers as well at times. What you also notice about the fights where Ankalaev does shoot takedowns is that he only tends to complete a small percentage of the takedowns that he shoots. So you'll see him maybe complete 2 takedowns out of 10, something like that. It's obviously a bad stat. However, what you notice about Ankalaev in his fights is he will shoot a lot of takedowns but not really commit to taking his opponents down. So all those takedown attempts are kind of half-assed takedown attempts where he's not really committing to get the fight to the ground. He's kind of just feinting a takedown to give his opponent something else to think about, to set up his striking, or he's kind of driving him into the cage to beat him up in the clinch a bit, but he's not really trying that hard to get in on the legs, upset their balance and put them on the ground. So I'm showing you this Blachowicz fight now because this is obviously a fight where he did use a lot of grappling. So we're just going to skim through, and what I want you to do is pay attention to how bad this fight gets for Ankalaev before he actually decides to wrestle. So we know that Blachowicz, and again, there will be guys who will disagree with me, but these guys have not done their homework and they need to before passing judgment on MMA. Blachowicz has terrible takedown defense and a very, very low level ground game, and he's very weak off his back. And there will be a bunch of guys that will pop up with whataboutisms, or what about what he did to fucking Rockhold, or what about what he did to Izzy. I don't care about any of that. Blachowicz's takedown defense and ground game very bad. It's just the way it is if you look at his entire body of work throughout his career. So at any point in this fight, similar to Pereira, Ankalaev can just take Blachowicz down and dominate him. He doesn't have to stand and strike. He doesn't have to stand and bang. So this fight is kind of a crazy one because we know Blachowicz, the Polish power, has true legit knockout power in his hands. At any second, Ankalaev could get knocked out here. And it doesn't matter how tough, how durable, how amazingly skilled Ankalaev is. At the end of the day, it only takes one shot and it's over for you. So when you see a fight like this, this reaffirms, and we cannot call Ankalaev a retard because it's disrespectful and potentially cancelable, so we can't use that word. But this fight is a very good example of how Ankalaev doesn't make good decisions. Because, you know, just like little left hooks there behind the ear. Just a little left hook from Jan. Just a little one there, bang. You know what I'm saying? Ankalaev ate it, fine, no danger. But he spent 5 minutes here not wrestling when he could have just wrestled. He could have just took Blachowicz down. You know what I'm saying? Put the first round in the bank, not taking any damage. Set himself up for winning the title and live happily ever after in Grozny, where he's Kadyrov's bitch and he can just go around fucking probably executing innocent people and terrorizing people and being a outright bastard you know, as one of Kadyrov's henchmen. He could just be an absolute twat with his UFC belt in Grozny for the rest of his life. But he's like, nah, what I'll do, I'll just stand here and get my fucking knees kicked apart by Polish power. So yeah, this is the fight. This is the part of the fight I want to show you. So obviously, we're about 9 minutes in, and Blachowicz hammers the inside leg here. Obviously, I've skipped through the first 9 minutes, so you haven't really seen what led to this point. You haven't really seen Blachowicz chipping away at that lead leg with leg kicks. Obviously, want to go do your own research, go watch this fight yourself. But yeah, he's hammered that leg, and eventually now, 9 minutes in, Ankalaev's lead leg is starting to give out. Right, this is bad, and we know that Blachowicz, he's got nasty leg kicks. What do we also know about this guy, Potan? He's got pretty fucking nice leg kicks as well. He could hurt you very bad with the leg kicks. He disguises them so well. They're very, very difficult to see him come in. He's a ninja. Absolute demon with the leg kicks. And so, what you see is Ankalaev's happy to stand and bang. There's been no takedowns in like the first 8 or 9 minutes of this fight. No takedown attempts. And then all of a sudden, when he runs into trouble, he wants to be a wrestler now all of a sudden. He's like, oh, now I want to wrestle. And he shoots his single leg. But doesn't fully commit to it. Right? Doesn't fully commit to it. Just kind of puts Blachowicz over to the cage. And then, for the rest of this round, I mean, look. Look at this, right? So he shoots kind of a half-ass single leg attempt there. And he walks Blachowicz over to the cage. Right? But still a minute left to go in the round, and your right leg is fucked. Surely you would want to see Ankalaev try to get this fight back to the ground. Because if, you know, he's had to switch stances here to protect his right leg. And now Blachowicz is going to attack the other leg, the left leg. Which he does. You could already see him spamming the leg kicks. And at this point in the fight, surely you'd be thinking, if you're Ankalaev, yo, this is a world title. This is a world title. Don't you want to walk around Grozny with your victory parade, with your fucking bum boy Kadyrov next to you in the fucking G-Wagon wearing shades, looking all cool in your fucking military outfit? Don't you want to look cool? How'd you better not get this fight back to the ground? He doesn't even really try. Just gets his legs blasted for another minute. So then, into round 3, Ankalaev's legs are fucked. Blachowicz opens a round up with another thunderous leg kick. Look at that. As soon as he switches. Look. This is beautiful, right? This is beautiful. So Ankalaev's a southpaw. He's a southpaw. So, after taking all the damage to that right leg. Why am I in the orthodox stance? He's a southpaw, right? After taking all that damage to his lead leg from the southpaw stance. Yeah? He's come out orthodox by here, right? He's come out orthodox. He's trying to protect his lead leg, which would be his right leg, obviously, from the southpaw stance. And watch, as soon as he switches back to his natural stance here, southpaw, what does Blachowicz do? Immediately, boom! Inside leg kick. And Blachowicz is literally saying, nah, bitch, get back orthodox. And Ankalaev has to go back orthodox. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And then he starts attacking the left leg, the lead leg from the orthodox stance. It's brilliant. And now we're in a situation where it's kind of like round 3. Ankalaev's down 2 rounds. His right leg's taking a beating. His left leg is now starting to take a beating. He's a southpaw fighter that can't fight southpaw anymore, because as soon as he dangles that right leg out, lead leg, you know, every time the lead leg from southpaw, the right leg gets kicked, his leg buckles, he can't stand up. And he's fucked, bro. Look again. Look, you love it. Look. He loves it. He loves it. Blachowicz, a monster. So he's fighting orthodox, and then Ankalaev's like, okay, I need to go back southpaw. And Blachowicz is like, nah, bitch, go back orthodox. And you love it. And all the while I'm sat here thinking, we're almost a minute into round 3. You're down 2 rounds. You can't stand up. Every time you go southpaw, Blachowicz is hammering your right leg. Take him down. Take him down. Do you want to be Kadyrov's bitch with a big gold belt? Yes, you do. Take him down. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And we skipped through. Minute and a half. What happens if Blachowicz lands one of these thunderous leg kicks and we find Ankalaev in a situation where he just blows his knee out and he can't stand up anymore? Or what happens if he just gets knocked out? We're a minute and a half into round 3. Where are the takedowns? Where are the takedowns? In his head, is he thinking, oh, I can't wrestle because Kadyrov told me I'm not allowed? What's he thinking? What was he doing? 2 minutes in. No takedowns. Just going to continue getting his legs hammered. This guy is so dumb. Midway point of round 3. He's getting it. Look at the limp. Look at the limp now. Look at the limp. Boom. Look at the limp. He's limping. Look at this. What are you doing? What are you doing? We are literally halfway through a title fight. You're down 3 rounds. You are the best grappler in the division. Why won't you shoot a takedown on a 40-year-old kickboxer that my fucking dog could take down if she jumped on him? If my dog jumped on Blachowicz, he'd fall over. That's how bad his takedown defense is. And what are we seeing from the best wrestler in the division? No wrestling. Nothing. 2 minutes 20 left to go in round 3. What are we doing? Minute and a half left to go in round 3. Minute left to go in round 3. He hasn't shot a takedown. In the 3rd round of a UFC title fight. I know you're a millionaire because you're Kadyrov's bitch and he takes care of you with blood money. Right? We know that. We know you don't have to be in the UFC and probably shouldn't be in the UFC. We're on about people getting cancelled for using the fucking word retard. Guys like Ankalaev should be getting cancelled for even being in the promotion when he's Kadyrov's bitch. He's probably going to have Kadyrov's sons in his corner this weekend. Let's not say anything about that though. Just sweep that under the rug. Cancel someone for calling Ankalaev a retard, but gloss over the fact he shouldn't even be in the UFC. Anyway, 40 seconds left to go in round 3. No takedowns. What are we doing? Oh, look. 10 seconds left to go. 10 seconds left to go. Oh, look. As if by fucking magic. As if by fucking magic. When you touch the 40-year-old kickboxer's legs, he falls over. Who would have thought that would have happened? Oh, look. He falls over. My God. And then the fucking penny drops. After 15 fucking minutes. That when you're literally the best wrestler in the division, fighting a fucking 40-year-old kickboxer, if you wrestle, you might actually win. The penny's fucking dropped after 15 minutes. And then he tries to wrestle. When he's already down 3 rounds. And look what happens when he wrestles. Oh, he has success. The 40-year-old kickboxer falls over again. And is easy to hold down. Who would have ever seen this coming? No one could have predicted this. That the 40-year-old Polish kickboxer with no takedown offense and no ground game would struggle against the best wrestler in the division. Who could have seen this coming? So look, history has a funny way of repeating itself, right? History has a very funny way of repeating itself. Yeah? Ankalaev fought them against a 40-year-old kickboxer and didn't lose the world title. Obviously, it was a draw, but he never won the world title. History has a funny way of repeating itself. Now he's fighting a damn near 40-year-old Brazilian kickboxer. Does lightning strike twice? Will he make the same mistake again? Now, this is where we have to have 2 ways of thinking about an MMA fight. And this is where all of our years of experience come in. All of our years of experience, okay? The one way you can look at this, you can look at it and you can go, Ankalaev fucked up bad against Blachowicz. It was an incredibly dumb performance, a very stupid performance, and he might be one of the dumbest fighters to ever fight for a title, and that is fucking saying something. But he might be, because not only did he wait until he could barely stand up before shooting a takedown, but even when he could barely stand up, he was still reluctant to wrestle in that third round, which is fucking insane to me. So he is probably the dumbest guy to ever fight for a UFC title. So there's one chain of thought where you can think, right, well, he fucked up against Blachowicz and it cost him a UFC title, and he would probably be the champion right now, if we're being brutally honest, if he would have just wrestled against Blachowicz. Because if he just wrestled against everyone, he would just beat everyone. We can go, there's no way this guy would be that dumb to do it again. There's no way he would make the same mistake against Alex Pereira, who is a far better striker than Blachowicz, far more dangerous striker than Blachowicz, younger than Blachowicz. There's no way he would make the same mistake again. No one could be that dumb. It's actually impossible. There's no way he would make that same mistake again. But friends, let me tell you, I've been doing this a long time. I've been betting on the sport of MMA for 15 fucking years, and I made a profit every single year doing it. And let me tell you something, brother. Do not underestimate the stupidity of a UFC fighter, especially when they've proven to you they're really, 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 really dumb. In our live betting group, we have something called the box. And when a fighter reaches heights of incomprehensible stupidity, they go in the box. And when these fighters are in the box, we never bet them because they're impossible to read. Guys like Kevin Holland, they're in the fucking box. They don't even know what they're going to do from minute to minute. So if they don't know what they're going to do, how can we know what they're going to do? How can we apply logic to a guy like Ankalaev? Because if we're smart and if we're logical, which we are, we're live betting the Blachowicz fight thinking to ourselves, oh, well, we've got to bet Ankalaev here because it's like utterly impossible he would be dumb enough to just stand there getting his leg kicks blown off into another dimension when he could just take this 40-year-old kickboxer down. That's what a logical brain thinks, right? There's fucking no way Ankalaev will just stand there basically getting years of mobility taken off his life when he could just avoid all the pain, all the suffering, and just take Blachowicz down. There's no way he could be that dumb. But let me tell you, brother, he was that dumb. And it wouldn't be surprised me if he was that dumb again, because when you look at who he's fought since Blachowicz, Walker, Rakic. Look, I know Rakic is a volume striker. He's not as dangerous with a raw power as Pereira or Mr. Blachowicz. However, Rakic is a big fucking guy. I wouldn't want to get punched in the face by him. He's got the odd big old flash KO here and there. Who'd he send to the Shadow Realm? It was Jimmy Manuwa, right? Bad, vicious head kick. At the end of the day, this is a game of inches. Just because Rakic doesn't have crazy power doesn't mean he can't land that one big shot. Yeah? He's a big old 6'4" Serbian fucker that if he punches you really hard in the face, he can knock you out. And yet, despite this, in a title elimination bout, or a fight that was certainly going to thrust Ankalaev into the title picture with a win, he chose to just stand and bang and have a friendly kickboxing match and trust that nothing crazy would happen and that he wouldn't get knocked out. It's so dumb. So to me, when I look at the Blachowicz fight, if his immediate next fight after the Blachowicz fight was Pereira, we could be sat here thinking, you know what, he's going to have learned a lot from the mistakes he made against Blachowicz. He ain't going to fucking make the same mistake against Pereira. He's going to go in there and grapple his little dick off. Now, after the Rakic fight, where he literally doesn't shoot a single takedown in 15 minutes, I'm sat here thinking to myself, oh, this is the fucking Chechen Kevin Holland. He's got no brain. Nothing going on between the ears, man. This guy's probably going to try and win a kickboxing match against Alex Pereira, and we all know how that usually works out for people. We all know how that usually works out for people. Khalil Roundtree is very, 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 very lucky that he picked up Mia Kang before he fought Alex Pereira, because with how he looks now after that Pereira fight, there's no way he's getting me a girl like Mia Kang. Not a chance. So timing is everything. And Khalil Roundtree, lucky guy, because he stood and struck with Pereira for damn near 20 minutes, and we all saw how that went. Ankalaev is a very good boxer, very high level striker, but so is Khalil Roundtree, and we all saw how that went down. you know, I would not trust this guy. All my years of experience make it very difficult to trust guys like this. So, from a betting point of view, what does all that mean? It means if you're pre-fight betting this fight this weekend, you must hate money, to be honest with you. Because if you bet Alex Pereira this weekend, that ain't a good bet. Brazilian, damn near 40 years old, 38 years old, was 2 years between friends. Damn near 40-year-old Brazilian with 54 pro fights, bunch of head trauma, bunch of miles on the clock, bunch of damage throughout his career. Literally a strong gust of wind is enough to take this guy down, and he's got nothing off his back, and he's fighting probably the best wrestler in the division. I would say the best wrestler in the division. So if you bet Pereira, that's not a very smart bet. That's not a very good bet, because if you look at his odds, implied probability of 53%, how can you find any value here? How can you tell me you think Pereira is going to win 60%, 70% of the time, which is what you would need to do in order to get a decent value of a decent margin of value? How can you tell me you think Pereira is going to win 60% of the time when literally this guy's takedown offense is so bad that probably when he's just like walking around taking his dog for a walk, he's just falling over all over the place. This guy's takedown offense is very, very bad. Very bad. And we've come with receipts. We've shown you the footage so you can see that for yourself. When it comes to Ankalaev, though, you can't tell me Ankalaev is a good bet. You cannot do it. Why? Because in more than half of his fights, he doesn't wrestle. And you cannot apply logic to guys like this. You can't apply logic to guys in the box like Ankalaev and Kevin Holland. You can't do it because they don't fight logically. You can't expect them to be logical. You can't expect them to be smart and logical like you because they ain't smart and logical. Look at the Blachowicz fight. Ankalaev didn't wrestle until both his legs were fucked up. He didn't start to wrestle when his right leg was fucked. He waited until his left leg was proper fucked, and then he started to wrestle. How can you take a risk on this guy? Pereira needs to land one clean, hard shot to send this guy to the Shadow Realm, or wherever the equivalent is in Grozny. I mean, maybe Chechnya, Grozny, and the Kadyrov is the fucking Shadow Realm. It looks a lot like hell to me, and maybe Ankalaev likes it there, right? Maybe he likes being in hell with his bum boy Kadyrov. But point being, you cannot fucking trust this guy. You're crazy if you trust this guy, especially after he didn't shoot any takedowns against Rakic. So you gotta be really careful with this guy. And when you look at the implied probability on his odds, what are his odds? Around 1.95. That's going to carry an implied probability of that 50% ballpark too, is 51%. How can you tell me that you cap this guy at 60% or better when he waited until he basically couldn't walk to shoot a takedown against Blachowicz and doesn't grapple in more than 50% of his fights? You just can't do it. So what's the moral of this story? Live bet it. Live bet it. You don't have to put your money in harm's way before a punch is thrown. You don't have to. Wait and see if Ankalaev's going to give you any little signs that he's going to grapple. And look, at the end of the day, someone might get knocked out before that happens. Or Ankalaev may get a big takedown and dominate Pereira, and then the odds crash and you're like, oh my god, I should have bet Ankalaev. You know what I mean? And you kick yourself. I shouldn't have listened to that stupid British guy on YouTube that told me to be patient. What a stupid concept. I'm trying to bet on sports. When would being patient ever be a good idea, betting on sports? Newsflash, fucking always. Actually, always being patient is the correct thing to do, because think about it. If you put your money on this fight before a punch is thrown, you're at the mercy of the universe. And you can lose all your money very easily. Now, if you're patient and you just wait, guess what might happen? You might lose your money anyway. You may make the bad decision, the wrong decision when the fight's taking place. Something crazy might happen, might cost you money. Or you might get all the answers to your questions that we don't have now and get a super strong position when you're live betting the fight and be able to make a very, very solid profit that comes with very, very minimal risk, where you're not putting your money in that much danger. Obviously, the other scenario is that someone gets knocked out, or Ankalaev gets an early takedown and dominates the fight and the odds crash. You never get a chance to place a live bet. And again, you're like, why did I listen to this stupid British guy on YouTube that told me to be patient? Let me tell you why. It's because we have hundreds of UFC fights to bet every single year. Who cares about this fight? It's totally irrelevant. This fight, from our perspective, from my perspective, is no more important than Mayron Santos versus Francis Marshall or John Castaneda versus Chris Gutierrez. Every single one of these fights that you see is an equal opportunity to make money. And that's all you should be focusing on. So when we've got hundreds of UFC fights every year, understand there's a great deal of abundance. There's a lot of opportunities to make money. There's a lot of opportunities to snipe amazing live bets. So if the opportunity this weekend passes you by and you're not able to get in on a live bet, it doesn't matter. Just don't take a loss. Don't gamble. Don't put your money in danger on what is essentially a coin flip. These odds are pretty much where they should be. There's absolutely no need to gamble. And if you miss a live bet on this one, don't worry. There's another 12 fights next week, where if you do your homework, you do your research, you work hard, you come in prepared, you've got a great shot at making money on that fight. So look, don't stress it. Just chill. It's a very difficult fight to call pre-fight. Don't worry about it. But don't trust dumb fighters. And Ankalaev definitely ticks that box. So, in terms of the over-under on this one, which way are we going? The odds are heavily weighted in favour of this fight not going to a decision. Obviously, I would agree with that. Very unlikely this one goes the distance, because either Ankalaev comes in with a grappling heavy game plan, overwhelms Pereira on the ground, likely gets a stoppage, or Ankalaev gets knocked out fighting like a dumbass. To be fair, it probably wouldn't take much to knock out a 38-year-old Brazilian at this stage in Pereira's career. Izzy did it. Ankalaev's a lot bigger than Izzy. I wouldn't be surprised if Ankalaev knocks Pereira out this weekend. Pereira is at that stage in his career where his chin, his durability will be starting to go. So, in terms of the over-under, I'm quite surprised actually the odds are that generous on the under 3.5 rounds at around 1.80, which I think would be like minus 125, although American odds are very confusing. 1.80 in that range. I'm quite surprised. The under 3.5 rounds is actually pretty tempting, just because I don't see how, if they stand and strike, someone doesn't get knocked out. And I don't see how Pereira survives with Ankalaev for what would be 17.5 minutes. That's a long time. So yeah, under 3.5 rounds are quite like that. In terms of the most likely outcome for the props, when Ankalaev does grapple, does he go for submissions or ground and pound? I'd imagine he's a ground and pound type guy. These fucking Chechens, they love to smash, right? They love the smash. So knockout or TKO would come in play for... the odds are absolutely terrible. Yeah, the odds aren't that great. I would give that a miss. Hope you found that useful. Now let's move on to the next one. Now let's break down the next fight on this card, which is going to be Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Fiziev is the favourite at average odds of about 1.65, which is going to be minus 154 for an implied probability of 61%. If we take a look at the odds on Gaethje, he is around an average of, say, 2.25, which is going to be plus 125 for an implied probability of 44%. So Gaethje is 36 years old, 5'11", with a 70-inch reach. Fiziev, 32 years old, 5'8", with a 71.5-inch reach. So we can see both guys are about the same size, but Gaethje is getting pretty old. He's going to be 37 years old later this year. He's had 30 pro MMA fights. Obviously, he's taken a lot more damage than Fiziev in his career. A lot of wear and tear on the body, a lot of damage, a lot of miles on the clock. And this is also his first fight back after suffering an absolutely devastating knockout at the hands of Holloway. Now, it's nice that he's taken a year off to let his brain heal. However, obviously, it was a pretty bad knockout. Not the kind of knockout that you really want to be taking you know, around about your mid-30s, because that can change a fighter forever. And the thing about Gaethje is he is still very durable. He still is very tough. He still has a great chin. You know, ultimately, he was able to go 5 hard rounds with Holloway after having his nose crushed very early in that fight. But if you remember the World Series of Fighting days in particular, Gaethje was a guy that, you know, relied on his chin a lot, took a lot of damage, and so Gaethje is the kind of guy that would be very susceptible, in my opinion, to his chin completely going after a knockout like that, just because of how much cumulative damage he's taken throughout his career. From a very, very early stage in his career, he was having absolute wars before he even got to the UFC, and so it will be interesting to see how Gaethje looks after that knockout this weekend, because it was a bad one. Fiziev obviously only had 15 pro fights, and if we look at his record, you know, I don't think he's been knocked out one time against Mustafaev in his debut. Outside of that, he's never been knocked out. He's also a lot better defensively than Gaethje, and so at 32 years old, you think he would be more durable. Now, this is obviously a rematch of a fight that took place back in 2023, so 2 years ago, almost to the day, and it was actually a very recent fight for Fiziev. He's only fought once since then, and it's interesting. This is an interesting one for me because we haven't seen very much of Fiziev since their first fight, and so their first fight is something big we want to focus on in research, because in the case of Fiziev, not a lot has changed since he last fought Justin Gaethje. And so when you look at their last fight, the odds on this matchup are very confusing, and I don't really know why Gaethje is the underdog. So if we consider everything coming into this one, obviously Gaethje was originally supposed to face Dan Hooker. He's pulled out. Fiziev is coming in on short notice, coming in on, like, I think about 2-3 weeks notice, something like that. Fiziev's gas tank's never been the best. It arguably cost him in their first fight, and now he's coming in on short notice. This is one of those fights where you have to just let the odds do the work for you, and for me, Gaethje is absolutely the obvious pick at underdog odds. I just don't know why you would ever bet Fiziev as a slight favourite when he literally lost to Gaethje, you know, reasonably decisively. It was a close competitive fight, but Gaethje definitely won 2 of the 3 rounds. Why would you bet on Fiziev at favourite odds against the guy that literally beat him 2 years ago? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. When it comes to Justin Gaethje, we haven't seen him decline since that fight. We've seen him get brutally knocked out, but we haven't seen him decline. And so even though he is older, even though this is his first fight back after a brutal knockout, this is one of those fights where the odds just don't make sense to me. I don't understand them. So in terms of how they match up stylistically, obviously it's very unlikely we're going to get any grappling in this fight. Both guys like to stand and bang. It's very rare you'll see either guy try to take the other down. So it's going to be one of those fights where you'll see them both stand in front of each other, you know, look to take the other out. So, you know, most likely outcome is both guys stand and bang. Fiziev's going to be the more technical out of the two, the better defensively, but Gaethje lands the harder, more damaging, more impactful stuff. Gaethje's got more raw power, very, very nice leg kicks. What you really notice about their first fight when you watch it back in the cold light of day is that Fiziev wasn't really able to hurt Gaethje. So obviously Fiziev's a dangerous striker, but Gaethje just dealt with Fiziev's power pretty well. He didn't really take much damage in a visible sense. He ate big shots, but he wasn't really wearing much damage at the end of the fight. He kind of ate and absorbed everything that Fiziev threw at him very comfortably, but when Gaethje would land on Fiziev, he would inflict a lot of damage and he would hurt him, and really the power of Gaethje was the difference between these two. So from a betting point of view, Bit of a no-brainer for me to pick Gaethje here. If you want to bet this fight, you have to go Gaethje. I don't love the idea of betting on a 36-year-old in his first fight back after a brutal knockout. But for me, the odds on this fight are the wrong way round. If I was capping this fight, I would have Gaethje as the slight favourite, and I would have Fiziev as the slight underdog. I don't really know why Fiziev is the favourite here. It doesn't really make any sense to me. So, I am tempted to bet Gaethje this weekend. I might bet Gaethje this weekend. The only thing I don't like about betting Gaethje this weekend is this fight will be razor close. It's, you know, when you look at their first fight, it's not like Gaethje won it comfortably. It was razor close, really, really competitive. And so, you know, even if you do take Gaethje this weekend, the odds of like 2.30, which is the best you can get on him at the moment, you know, plus 130 for an implied probability of 43% in a fight that's going to be razor close. You know, that's not an amazing margin of value. Not an amazing margin of value in a fight that is very close. Now, if you told me both these guys would show up and look exactly like they did in their last fight, I would be all over Gaethje in this odds range, and that would be a good margin of value. But with Gaethje coming back after such a brutal knockout, and him being, you know, a year older, couple of years older, sorry, Father Time's undefeated, just adds another layer of uncertainty to the fight, so I don't like it as much. But I'm strongly considering a bet on Gaethje, and I think a fight like this is an IQ test, if I'm honest. Why would you bet Fiziev at favourite odds when he lost to this guy 2 years ago, and not a whole lot has changed since? Not a whole lot that we've seen. Doesn't matter, it doesn't mean it hasn't changed. It could have. Father Time's undefeated, but we haven't seen it. And that's the difference here. That is the difference, right? So in terms of the over-under on this one, their last fight sailed to a decision. Both did take a lot of damage. Both ate big shots. But they are both very tough. They are both very durable. Like I've just said, we saw Gaethje go deep into the 5th round against Max Holloway after having his nose completely crushed early in that fight. So he's very tough. Gaethje's the kind of guy that you have to practically kill in order to finish. He's a demon. And if you look at Fiziev, he's obviously very tough and very durable as well. So even though this fight will be a war, pretty likely it goes to a decision. But because they do both have that killer instinct and they're both going to be taking each other, trying to take each other out, it is dangerous to bet on this fight to go to a decision because, well, it only takes one shot to end the fight. And they are both capable of putting one another away. So also we've got a question, will Gaethje be as durable after that big knockout loss at the hands of Holloway? Probably not. That kind of knockout could take years off your life. So if we then look at prop bets for this one, do we have props? We better refresh this. Where are we with the props? Where are we? Okay, so if we look at the props for this one, Gaethje by decision is the only one I would consider. The odds aren't great. The odds aren't great. But if you want to sprinkle a little bit of money to make watching the fight more interesting, Gaethje by decision is what I would go with. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. And now it is time for us to move on to the next one, which is going to be Jalin Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, I think this is the 3rd fight in a row in the even money odds range, which we can discuss. Very nice. We've got Turner as the slight underdog at average odds of about, call it 2.0, which is going to be plus 100 for an implied probability of 50%. And he is facing Bahamondes, who's an average of about 1.80, which is going to be minus 125 for an implied probability of 56%. So Turner is 29 years old, 6'3", with a 75.5-inch reach. Bahamondes, 27 years old, 6'3", with a 75.5-inch reach. So both guys about the same age and about the same size, virtually identical in terms of the tail of the tape. And what I also find real interesting about this matchup is that usually these two guys have got a big size advantage and quite often a decent reach advantage over whoever they're facing, because they're two of the biggest fighters in the division by wingspan. The UFC have done an amazing job with the matchmaking for this fight because they're both about the same size. which is really interesting because they're not going to be able to use their length in the way that they usually do. There's no reach advantages here. Now, in terms of how these two match up stylistically, obviously they're both primarily strikers, and it's very unlikely you'll see any grappling in this fight. You know, both guys are pretty bad on the ground. They very rarely shoot takedowns. Both these guys like to stand and strike. So we know that Bahamondes is one of these relentless pressure fighters. He likes to come forward, take control center of the octagon, pepper his opponents with jabs, force them to constantly engage and exchange, and he's just an absolute warhorse. He fights at a very high pace. He's very tough. He's very durable. He's got amazing cardio. Turner is more of a technical sniper. Now, that's not to say that Bahamondes isn't technical as well, because he is. He's got great boxing. But Turner is more of a kind of flashy, explosive, very accurate sniper style that looks to catch you with big, singular sniper shots that inflict a lot of damage and potentially knock you out. Whereas Bahamondes more like death via 1,000 cuts, where he looks to chip away at you, outstrike you, outpoint you, land a very high volume strike. So you've got like a real clash of styles on the feet here. Now, the kind of weakness that you see in the striking of both these guys is they're both not the best defensively, but bad defensively in their own ways. So Bahamondes is kind of reckless. He loves to exchange, so he doesn't mind hanging in the pocket and eating big shots. And that's kind of how he's bad defensively, because he's quite reckless. And he's like that. He's quite reckless. He's quite bad defensively against guys that he's much bigger and taller and longer than. And so against a guy of a similar size to him, he's going to be even more vulnerable. And he needs to really be careful against Turner, because Turner does have that true legit knockout power. So Bahamondes is kind of reckless because he's tough and scrappy. Turner's reckless, or Turner's not reckless, but Turner's bad defensively in another way, in the sense that a lot of guys that are abnormally long and tall for the division don't really move their head that much. And Turner's guilty of that. So he does get dinged a lot. You see this long old giraffe neck that he's got. We were talking about this last week with Sam Patterson. Guys with this body type are a bit more susceptible to being knocked out. And if you look at Jalen Turner's record, he's got 8 losses, which is a lot of losses for a guy with this many fights. And we can see that he's been knocked out a bunch. Knocked out a bunch earlier on in his career. Knocked out by Luque, knocked out by this guy, knocked out by this guy, knocked out by this guy. He hasn't really been knocked out a whole lot in recent years. But he hasn't really fought particularly dangerous strikers either. Moicano grappled, Bobby Green volume striker, Dan Hooker volume striker, and to be fair, Hooker did wobble him. Gamrot wrestler. Riddell's dangerous, but that fight only lasted 45 seconds. Malarkey volume striker. Medic fight ended quickly. Brock Weaver just kind of a grinder. Kulabov volume striker. You get the idea what I'm trying to say. Has really fought really dangerous strikers, and to be fair, even though Bahamondes won his last fight by knockout, he's not a really dangerous striker either. He's more of a volume striker. Probably doesn't have the power in his hands to make Turner pay for not really moving his head that much, but it's just something to be thoughtful of, mindful of if you are betting Turner this weekend. So when it comes to betting this fight, I'm very torn on this one. When I saw that these two were matched up, my initial thoughts were that this was a great fight for Bahamondes, and in the even money odds range, I thought that I would be betting him this week. When I researched it, I'm not as sure. Bahamondes is difficult to deal with because he makes you fight at a very high pace, which is uncomfortable for most. And based on the Dan Hooker fight, is likely to be uncomfortable for Jalen Turner. He really didn't like the pace or the pressure the Hooker put on him. And I think that Bahamondes, with the exception of the grappling the Hooker used very late in that fight, I think that Bahamondes could use a sort of similar game plan and strategy to Hooker to kind of wear Turner down with pressure and aggression and just turning the fight into a total chaotic war where Bahamondes will thrive and Turner not so much. But what you do notice about Bahamondes is he does spend a lot of time coming forward, blocking punches with his face. So he'll come forward to try and fight his way into a range where he can let his hands go. And as he's fighting his way into that range, he's kind of eating shots and taking a lot of damage. And this is against guys that are much smaller than Turner. So if guys that are much smaller than Turner are able to counter Bahamondes and inflict big damage, you know, guys like John Makdessi is a great example, then surely someone as long and tall and accurate as Turner will really be able to make Bahamondes pay for that kind of aggression that isn't done in a controlled, safe way. So I'm actually quite torn on this fight. I'm actually pretty torn, because either Bahamondes is going to wear Turner down with pressure and aggression and overwhelm him with the pace of the fight, or Turner's going to inflict loads of damage from the outside and kind of make Bahamondes pay. You know, Turner can play the role of Matador and pick Bahamondes off from the outside and just inflict more damage, land the more significant strikes. It's a great fight. The UFC matchmakers have done a really good job with this one. So I don't have a strong opinion either way. I guess my lean would be Turner, just because I think when they're both fresh, Turner will have the edge in striking. I think he'll be able to match Bahamondes' pace early, and he'll be able to land the cleaner, harder, more damaging stuff. I think there could come a point in the round where momentum, or there could come a point in the fight where momentum swings in Bahamondes' favour, but Turner's likely got the energy to win the first 2 rounds before that happens, and that's why my lean would be Turner. But it's a close fight that could go either way. I don't have a super strong opinion on it. In terms of the over-under, I do think it's pretty likely this fight goes deep, and the over 1.5 rounds is interesting to me. Yes, they're both dangerous. Yes, they're both aggressive. But we can see that if we look at Bahamondes' record, most of the time his fights last more than 1.5 rounds. And that's mainly because of how durable he is. If there is to be a finish in this fight, I think it's more likely that Turner would knock Bahamondes out, because Bahamondes doesn't really have knockout power. He's more of a volume striker. Now, again, yes, he's won his last 2 fights by knockout, but generally speaking, if you look at the big picture, more of a volume striker. So if Turner were to be finished, I think it would happen later in the fight when he's too tired to defend himself. You know, like when he rounded trouble against Hooker late on. I think this one's probably going to go pretty deep. I'm very tempted by the 1.5 rounds. I might bet that. If you're on my Discord, if you're a member of my community, I will let you know about that if I pull the trigger on it. The odds are a bit short, so I'll research this fight for a second time and I'll let you know what I think about it. But it is tempting. I could see this one go deep. It's just the odds. I don't love the odds, but maybe I'll prefer them better after I research this for a second time. In terms of most likely outcomes, the odds on Turner by decision are quite generous. I could see this being a very technical stand-up fight. If you do want to sprinkle a little bit of money on this one, Turner by decision, the odds are pretty good. Outside of that, what would Bahamondes to win in round 3 be? Because he is a buzzsaw. And if Turner does start to fade, Bahamondes will go for the kill late on. So Bahamondes wins by knockout at TKO in round 3, 14.0 plus 1,300. That's not a bad gamble. Not super likely to win. But when you're placing bets on things in that odds range, you don't need to win a super high percentage of the time to make a long-term profit. So that would be something that I would consider if I were you. And you're into your prop bets, trying to sprinkle a little bit to make a big multiple on your money. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Now let's break down the next fight on this card, which is a really good one. Another great fight. And this time it's Amanda Nunes versus Yasmin Lucindo. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see this is another fight in that even money odds range, where Lucindo is around an average of, say, 1.72. which is going to be minus 139 for an implied probability of 58%. And we can see that Lemos is around an average of, say, it's quite a big odds spread. We will call it 2.15, which is going to be plus 115 for an implied probability of 47%. So Lemos is 37 years old, and she's going to be 38 years old in about 2 months' time, which is ancient for a strawweight. So we were talking about Alex Pereira being pretty old for a light heavyweight at 38 years old, talking about Gaethje being pretty old for a lightweight at 36 years old. The strawweight division is the lightest weight class in the UFC, and so as a result, 38 years old for a strawweight, very, very, very old. And just like we said with Gaethje and Pereira, Father Time's undefeated, and Lemos should be starting to decline a lot from fight to fight now. So she's 5 foot with a 65-inch reach. She's fighting Lucindo, who is 23 years old, 5'3", with a 66-inch reach. So Lucindo is going to be, might have to get my calculator out for this one, just kidding. Obviously, Lucindo is 14 years younger than Lemos, and the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time, 7-0, when there is a 14-year age gap in a fight. Both girls are about the same size. This is one of those fights where, when you just look at that age statistic, and the fact that Lucindo, you know, her odds carry an implied probability of about 58%, you know that if you were to just blind bet that statistic over the long term, you're going to win around 70% of the time in fights like this. You know, the odds on Lucindo give you a 12% margin over that age stat. This could be one of those fights where it might not be a bad idea to just blind bet Lucindo in this fight based on the age stats. Look, it's a tough fight for both girls for various different reasons, but you don't see fighters in their late 30s beat fighters in like their early to mid 20s very often. This is a young person's game, and Lemos is ancient for a strawweight. So, how do these two match up from a stylistic point of view? Well, they're both primarily strikers with very different styles of striking, but I think this fight's going to be decided by grappling. We know that Lemos' takedown defense is very bad. I'm not going to say her ground game is bad, because she does have pretty nasty submissions. She's got nasty chokes. She's obviously got a lot of power in her arms. But she is very easy to take down and quite weak off her back. She's got an abundance of physicality and athleticism on the feet. That doesn't really translate to her ground game. So, what's interesting about this fight is that Lucindo faced a similar sort of opponent from a stylistic point of view in her last fight against Marina Rodriguez. Now, we actually bet Lucindo pre-fight to beat Rodriguez, and she came through for us in a very big way. Shout out to Lucindo. But it was a bit of a sweat. It was a close fight that went to a split decision, and in that fight, when we were breaking it down, if you go watch my breakdown video for that fight, it's going to be on YouTube somewhere. In fact, it might not be. I was a prelim fight, right? If you go on my website, you'll find somewhere buried on there, because this fight was a few months ago now. If you go on my website, actually, you know what I'll do? If you want to watch my breakdown for the fight between Rodriguez and Lucindo, because we did bet Lucindo pre-fight, what I will do, I'll leave a link in the description below for the video. You can go watch it, because that fight's very, very relevant to this one. There's a lot of similarities between Rodriguez and Lemos. Yes, Lemos has more raw power, and Rodriguez throws a higher volume of strikes than Lemos. But, fundamentally, they're both pretty nasty strikers, and their biggest weakness is their takedown offense and ground game. I would say Lemos is... fact, I'm not going to say anything. Let's just carry on. They're both pretty easy to take down. Let's just say that. So, when we look at how Lucindo and Lemos match up stylistically, it's going to be a competitive fight on the feet. Lemos hits a lot harder than Lucindo. She's a lot more technical. She's got really nasty leg kicks and true legit knockout power. Now, having said that, we do know Lucindo is tough as nails. She's very durable, and she is making big improvements from fight to fight. So, you know, we've seen her in a war with Yasmin Yaragui, you know, go 3 hard rounds with Rodriguez. We've seen her eat big shots. She's durable, she's tough, she's got a good chin. No one in the division hits as hard as Lemos, and power's the last thing to go. Even at 38 years old, Lemos going to hit pretty fucking hard. But Lucindo's a tough fucker. She is a tough fucker. She could take a shot. And so, when we consider how these two match up stylistically, Lemos will hit harder. No doubt about that. She will inflict more damage. But Lucindo does throw a high volume of strikes. She's busier. She's more aggressive than Lemos. Lemos is like an accurate sniper type fighter that throws the odd singular shot to try and kill you. Lucindo tries to, you know, outwork you and outpoint you with volume. So they do have different styles on the feet. On the feet, just like Lucindo versus Rodriguez, I think this will be very close. I think Lemos will land the harder, more impactful, more damaging shots to get the eyes of the judges and the crowd reactions. Lucindo will outwork Lemos, but when you look at the damage Lemos was able to inflict on someone like Mackenzie Dern, probably won't be enough to win rounds, especially early on the feet, against someone like Lemos. Especially when you look at how the Rodriguez fight went. So, this fight's really going to come down to whether or not Lucindo can get takedowns and keep the fight on the ground for long enough to win a decision. So what I'm going to do, we're going to pull up the Rodriguez fight, because the Rodriguez fight is going to give you some good information on how likely it is Lucindo can use a grappling heavy game plan to win this fight. So what we'll do, we'll show you her. Oh, in fact, I might be going about this the wrong way round, you know. Should I show you? Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to show you Lemos' takedown defense first, and then I'm going to show you Lucindo's wrestling, so then you can kind of see how likely it is. I fucking hate it when Fight Pass does that. So then you can see the likelihood that Lucindo will be able to use her grappling to win this fight. So what we're focused on here is Lemos' bad takedown defense. So you can see here, Jandiroba shoots a double leg, and Lemos kind of falls over. She kind of thinks about defending the takedown with a guillotine, and then just kind of falls over. So obviously 9 times out of 10 when you try and defend a takedown with a guillotine, it's only a matter of time for your opponent defends the guillotine, slips her head out. You see Jandiroba with a thumbs up here. And she does slip her head out. And so 3 minutes 30 seconds left to go in this round. We can see that Lemos is on the bottom. So if we just skip through. Now obviously Jandiroba does have a very heavy top game. Heavier than Lucindo. And Lemos does a good job of scrambling over to the cage from where she's been taken down. Quite far away from the cage, to be honest. And scrambles over to the cage and then is able to use her strength, her physicality to hit a reversal off the bottom and pop back up, which is very nice. And then they're in like this awkward 50-50 leg lock position. Eventually Lemos is back up. All good stuff. And into round 2. So if we go into round 2, we're just skipping through. So here you can see Jandiroba shoots a takedown. Lemos does a good job keeping her legs underneath her, and this is when we were talking about Alex Pereira's bad takedown defense in that breakdown. We were commenting on the fact that he doesn't go to underhooks very often to defend takedowns, which is why he's so easy to take down. Here you can see good technique from Lemos. She's got the underhook on the right side, the overhook on the left side, and this just makes it very difficult for Jandiroba to get in on her legs deep enough to complete the takedown. So we can see Lemos hits a nice reversal there, but Jandiroba and Lemos both get to their knees, scramble back up. So Lemos has got rid of the underhooks here, and for some reason she's trying to defend the takedown with like a Kimura, which is not the correct thing to do. My 2 girls in the background. And here you can see Lemos kind of just feeding her this lead leg. And Jandiroba basically flops to her back and wins a scramble. Gets the back. Blah, 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 blah. Gets the takedown. So look, at times there Lemos was doing the correct thing. Fighting for underhooks, overhooks. At times she wasn't. Where she was kind of feeding her the leg and going for that Kimura. So a mixture of good stuff and bad stuff there from Lemos. So if we bring up the Mackenzie Dern fight, I do want to show you a bit of footage here because we've obviously just played. I fucking hate it when Fight Pass does that. It plays the audio before I have a chance to fucking. Anyway, we're working backwards, right, from most recent fight, and we're zooming out. So you're only as good as your last fight. And your last fight is going to give us like the best indicator of what to expect this weekend. So this fight, even though it was a year ago and at 37, 38 years old, we would have expected Lemos to have declined a good amount since she fought Jandiroba. The fight was just under a year ago. At the same time, what you will see as we play footage of Lemos' last 3 fights, you will see improvement in Lemos' takedown defense. So against Jandiroba, her takedown defense wasn't bulletproof, but it wasn't terrible. She did a good job, reasonably good job of working her way back up to her feet, reasonably good job of using the cage to defend takedowns, right? So this is the fight before that against Mackenzie Dern. Now we know Mackenzie Dern isn't as good of an offensive wrestler as Jandiroba is. But here we can see nicely timed single leg there from Dern. She gets the takedown with about 2 minutes 40 seconds left to go in the round, right? So if we skip through now, you can see Lemos looks quite weak off her back. Now we know Mackenzie Dern's got fantastic grappling control and amazing top game. You don't want to be underneath Mackenzie Dern. I mean, maybe you do. You know what I mean? Maybe you do. But in the context of women's MMA, you don't want to be underneath it. I mean, maybe you still do, right? Who knows, you know? But anyway, Dern holds her down pretty easily for 2.5 minutes. Now, if we go into round 2, this is the round where Dern runs into all kinds of trouble, but then, like a fly into a spider's web, Lemos makes the mistake of letting Dern off the hook by recovering on the ground, or giving Dern a chance to recover on the ground after she's badly hurt. Lemos played around on the ground a little bit too much. She got reversed here right at the end of round 2. But fortunately for Lemos, wasn't too long left in the round for Dern to do anything with that position. If we go into this third round, Dern gets the quick knockdown. She pulls guard. Lemos on top position, but you know, it's only a matter of time before Dern finds a way to get into a dominant position because she's very scrambly on the ground, and she manages to get on top of Lemos with about 2.5 minutes left to go in round 3. So if we skip through, you can see Lemos again gets held down before working her way back up to her feet right at the end of the fight. 45 seconds left to go in round 3. And this is quite huge to me because earlier in Lemos' career, she had this reputation as being a fighter who slows down a lot in fights, who gasses out a lot in fights. But even though she's in her late 30s now, this is an area where she's improving to the extent where even late on in this fight, like 45 seconds, 30 seconds left to go, look how she's still got the energy to scramble in these positions. It's kind of crazy, right? Especially when we know Mackenzie is a cardio machine and very capable of holding you down because of how heavy and strong she is from top position. So that little sequence there shows the Lemos' cardio definitely not as bad as it used to be. It's improved a hell of a lot actually. So what we saw in that fight was, to be fair, not a whole lot of takedown defense from Lemos. She got taken down in that first round, but after that, every time she found herself in a bad position on the ground, it tended to be because she engaged in, or just lost scrambles against Dern on the ground. So then this is the Weili Zhang fight, which is, you know, about 2 years ago now, just under 2 years. So if we hit play, Zhang used a lot of wrestling in this fight, and this is a fight where you can really see how much Lemos has improved her takedown defense and ground game, because when you look at the Zhang fight, this footage I'm about to play you, Lemos' takedown defense looks really bad in this fight, and she's very, very weak off her back. So you can see Zhang sweeps the leg there, gets into side control with about 4 minutes left to go in the round, and just beats Lemos up from top position. You know, gets her down easily, beats Lemos up from top position, just dominates Lemos from top position, just overwhelms her on the ground for most of the first round. Going to round 2. Zhang gets to the body lock, hits an outside trip, and you can see Lemos just goes flying to the ground. So 4 minutes left to go in the round again. If we just skip through, again, you can do your own research. You want to watch these fights in more detail. We don't want to make the breakdowns super long. But generally speaking, Lemos just gets overwhelmed, dominated on the ground for the most part. But she is able to elevate Zhang with that butterfly hook and pop back up. But then Zhang just takes her right back down. And you could just see real bad takedown defense from Lemos. Yes, they're nice inside-outside trips from Zhang, but Lemos is going down very easily. And she went down against Jandiroba pretty easily, went down against Dern pretty easily. So then if we go into this round, you know, you can see here Lemos does a good job getting underhooks in play up against the cage. Like we always say, very, very difficult to get in deep enough on your opponent's legs to upset their balance. If you have deep underhook, or if your opponent has deep underhooks in play. So Lemos with a good use of the underhooks here. Nice deep underhook on that right side, making life difficult for Zhang. But then Zhang jumps in on a single leg on the opposite side where there's no underhook and upsets Lemos' balance. You see Lemos go down very easily, and then again just gets overwhelmed on the ground. So again, I don't want to make this breakdown super long. There's a lot more grappling in rounds 4 and 5, but there's no need for us to show that. I think I've made my point on the fact that Lemos has pretty bad takedown defense. She's pretty weak off her back as well. But she does appear to be getting better at scrambling back up to her feet. And her takedown offense in the Jandiroba fight showed signs of improvement. So let's show you a bit of footage of Lucindo's offensive wrestling. And then this one will start to make sense for you why this is a very interesting fight. So we're not focused on the striking. You know, we've already spoken about that. We know how the stand-up is likely to go. This fight's likely going to be decided by grappling. So, Lucindo waited until the end of the first round to shoot the first takedown. And she gets the body lock here. And then looks for the outside trip. And gets it in the half guard to end the round in a dominant position. If we go into round 2... Skip. Here we go. A bit of grappling. A bit of clinch work. Lucindo doesn't really, up until this midway point of round 2, is not really committed to a takedown. She's been kind of standing and striking. Now she commits. Nice body lock into the outside trip. Bup. There she goes. In the half guard. 2.5 minutes left to go in the round. And we know Rodriguez very, very weak off her back. Far weaker off her back than Lemos. And then Goddard stands him up for something. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it might have been a finger in the eye or some bullshit, or they were pulling hair. I'm not too sure. Anyway, into round 3. Skippity, skip. This time, Lucindo, sensing it, is probably 1 round apiece. Goes the takedown early. She gets the body lock. Looks for an outside trip here. Doesn't get that. Rodriguez clears her legs. Now she's looking for the inside trip on the left side. Doesn't get that. Inside trip again. Outside trip. Rodriguez keeps her legs underneath her. And then she gets the inside trip. Mounts Rodriguez. And then again, Goddard stands him up for some bullshit. Not exactly sure why. Goddard, like P. Diddy, wants to be all up in the video. Getting involved as always. And then, yeah, she wins a scramble. Blah, 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 blah. I guess in the top position. So anyway, just wanted to show you a bit of footage. So that as we summarize this one, you'll understand my perspective. So what is very, very, very notable to me when you watch Lemos' last 3 fights is that Jandiroba, Dern and Zhang are all far more physically imposing grapplers than Lucindo. I wouldn't say Lucindo is slight and feminine. I wouldn't go as far to say that. Because she does have a bit of power in her hands and she is heavy from top position. She's not one of these female fighters that has no physicality to her game. But for me, she's just not in the same universe as physicality compared to Jandiroba, Dern and Zhang. And of course, you can make the complete accurate assessment that Dern and Jandiroba have very little physicality when it comes to striking. However, when it comes to grappling, both Dern and Jandiroba are extremely strong, and obviously Zhang is a tank everywhere. So what's quite notable to me in these 3 fights is that even though Lemos was taken down relatively easily in all 3 fights, when she was on her back against all of them, generally speaking, within 2 minutes of being taken down, she was able to scramble over to the cage and use the cage to stand back up. That is quite significant because Lucindo isn't anywhere near as strong from top position as those 3 here. So if Lemos is able to work her way back up to her feet relatively quickly against these 3, she's probably going to be able to work her way back up to her feet even easier against Lucindo. What I would also say is the Mackenzie Dern fight is a brilliant fight for gauging just how difficult Lemos can make life for Lucindo, because that Dern fight was insane. It was contested at such a high pace. We know Dern is a cardio machine. You know, Amanda Lemos scored knockdowns, so there was the potential for adrenaline dump. There were loads of crazy scrambles on the ground, you know, big exchanges, both stand up and on the ground. That's the exact type of fight where you'd expect Lemos to gas hard. And yet in that 3rd round, Lemos was the one that had the energy to kind of stuff the takedowns and scramble out of bad positions Dern was trying to put her in round 3. So when you look at, I don't think Lucindo looked particularly strong in those grappling positions against Rodriguez. I think she was having success with them because of how bad Rodriguez is when it comes to defending takedowns and how weak she is off her back. I think Lucindo could really struggle to get Lemos down and hold her down for long enough for it to really significantly impact rounds in this fight. So this is a very interesting fight. From a betting point of view, I think this is one of those fights where you've got to try and not overthink things and just say, look, this is a 38-year-old Brazilian that relies a lot on speed and reflexes and athleticism. She's fighting a girl 14 years younger than her. In those situations, the older fighters don't win very often. We know that to be true. But when you look at the matchup stylistically, it's quite a bad stylistic matchup for Lucindo. Because on the feet, Lemos will likely land the harder, more damaging, more impactful shots. And based on recent performances, I think Lucindo will find it difficult to get Lemos down and hold her down. But then, of course, at 38 years old, we know Lemos will likely show up and decline pretty soon. So there's a lot to think about it with this one. I would not overthink this, and my lean will just be Lucindo. But I do think this fight's likely to be razor close with tons of momentum swings back and forth and could definitely go either way. It's a brilliant fight for live betting. Amazing. I'm pretty sure we made money live betting Lucindo against Rodriguez. And she came through for us big. We definitely pre-fight bet her. I think we live bet her as well. I can't quite remember. But I have a feeling we'll be live betting this one as well. Very difficult fight from a pre-fight betting point of view. but I'm confident we'll make money on this one live. Just because there's so much footage available on both girls. We know so much about their strengths and weaknesses. As the fight's taking place, we're going to be able to visualize who's more likely to win. And very, very likely in a matchup like this, which is pretty likely to have lots of momentum swings, this is the exact type of fight we're likely to snipe a winner live. So rather than putting my money in a lot of danger pre-fight, where we don't know how Amanda Lemos is going to look at 38, we don't know if Lucindo's going to be able to hold her down for long enough to influence the outcome, I'd rather just save this one for live betting rather than putting my money in a lot of danger before a punch is thrown. Because I could see this one going either way. In my head though, if you do want to pre-fight this one, I would play that age trend and just go with Lucindo and just trust the universe to make you a little bit richer on Saturday night, and just trust in the trend. The trend is your friend until the end of the trend, and that trend will never end, because this is a young person's game and Lemos is old as fuck for a strawweight. So in terms of the over-under on this one, pretty likely this fight goes deep. Both are very tough, both are very durable, both are very well-rounded. Despite this, Lemos hits like a fucking truck, and she has been submitted on the ground by Jandiroba, so I don't like the odds enough to bet on this fight to go to a decision. It's pretty steep favourite odds. I could see a finish in this one. Don't get many finishes in strawweight fights, but this is one you could see a finish. So I wouldn't want to pay a steep price on this to go to a decision, only for it not to go to a decision. But because it is very likely to go to a decision, I would not want to bet it not to go on a decision at slight dog odds, if that makes sense. Because Lemos frequently gets finished or does get a finish, and while Lucindo is an absolute decisionator, styles make fights, and Lemos quite often doesn't go to a decision. So I wouldn't touch the over-under on this one. The only prop I would consider would be Lucindo by decision, but in percentage terms the odds on that aren't that much better than her money line, so just don't get greedy. If you really want to bet this fight, I would just take Lucindo money line, but it's for sure a fight that could go either way. So now let's break down the final fight on this main card, which is going to be Maurizio one-shot Ruffy versus King Bobby Green. And now I feel we've been talking a lot about age on this main card. Pereira, Gaethje, Lemos. And we're going to be talking about it again, because King Bobby Green is going to be 39 years old later on this year. He's of course 38. He's had, let me get my mental calculator out, 33, 49, fuck me, he's had 59 pro fights. 59 pro fights. It's a lot of fights. That can't be right. Has he really had 59? No, it can't. That's 49. 49 pro fights. Either way, it's a lot of fights. Hell of a lot of fights. And we know Bobby Green has been in a lot of wars. He's taken a lot of damage. I mean, his career's up and down, and Father Time's undefeated. So he's 38, 5'10" with a 71-inch reach, and Ruffy, 28 years old, 5'11" with a 75-inch reach. It's a nice little 4-inch reach advantage for Ruffy, which helps because he definitely knows how to use it. And we can see there's a 10-year age gap in this fight, and we know the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time, 7-0, when there's a 10-year age gap in a fight. So if we take a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Ruffy is one of the biggest favourites on the card at average odds of about 1.22, which is going to be minus 455 for an implied probability of 82%. If we take a look at the odds on Green, he's around an average of 4.50, which is going to be plus 350 for an implied probability of 22%. So it's a bad stylistic matchup for Green. Again, young man's game. Ruffy, according to the age stats, will win 70% of the time. And both these guys like to stand and strike, right? Very rare you'll ever see either of these shoot a takedown. This should be a stand-up fight. It's a young man's game. Ruffy's got the speed, reflexes, the athleticism, the power, the sharpness, the technique. At this stage in their careers, he's the better striker. He hits harder. You know, he's got better fight IQ. He's consistent. We know Bobby Green likes to fuck around a lot. He's got a good jab. He's got good footwork. He's got good movement. He's passive at times. Very passive and has bad fight IQ. But Ruffy hits harder. Throws a more diverse range of strikes. Is better defensively. More technical. Ruffy should win this. I'd be very, very surprised if Ruffy lost. Ruffy's striking very, very decent. He's fighting nerds, guys. They're decent on the feet. Ruffy no exception. He should get the win here. So in terms of the over-under though, I do think it's very likely to go to a decision. The over 1.5 rounds is very interesting to me. I will most likely bet that. I will let you know on my Discord if you're a member of my community, if I decide to pull the trigger on that. I'll research this fight a second time to be absolutely sure, but the over 1.5 rounds, very tempting on this one. If you look at Green, even though a lot of his fights over the last few years have ended inside the distance, he is tough, he is durable, he's difficult to put away. And when you look at Ruffy, you just see a classic sign of what you often see in the UFC, where, you know, this guy gets tons of finishes outside the UFC when he's facing a lower level of opponent. And then as soon as he faces a step up in competition against someone like James Lontop, straight away he goes to a decision. Straight away he goes very deep on the Contender Series. And so it takes two to tango. Both are tough, both are well-rounded, both are durable. Ruffy does hit hard, but Green's pretty tough, pretty durable, even at this stage of his career. Rolls with the punches, good defensively. Yeah, I think this one's pretty likely to go over 1.5 rounds. Now, in terms of most likely outcomes for the props, Ruffy by decision's not bad. If you do want to bet a little bit of money on this fight to make watching it more interesting, obviously not going to be that exciting. Betting Ruffy at 1.22 could take Ruffy by decision. I don't like props, I won't be betting them myself. But Ruffy by decision, 3.5 plus 250. Not terrible if you just want to gamble a little bit for entertainment. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. If you did, please hit the like button below. I really appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't already. Please help the channel grow. Check out my website, mmabettingtips.com. Link in the description below. Come join the team, come join the group, come join the party. It will give you a whole new edge when it comes to betting on the UFC, especially if you're in the UFC live betting group. We do big things. We're very, very good at it. So give it a try. Take care. Thanks a lot. Love you all. Hope you crush it this weekend and make loads of money. We'll be back next week with another breakdown video for the next UFC card. Nice one, guys. Take care. Bye.